Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Apologies for the slight delay. We have with us Sobiya Jawaid, who's joining us from the UK. It's a very interesting session that we're really looking forward to. Sobiya, I will just quickly introduce her and I will let her take over. She's a transformational coach and has been helping professionals and executive members, board members, that are held back in their personal or professional life to feel sort of empowered, focused, and fulfilled. She is also a fantastic motivational speaker. But something very interesting about Sobiya is that she's the first hijab-wearing British Muslim black belt kickboxer to have represented and won a silver medal for the UK at European level. She's a mom, a wife, and a professional science teacher, and the CEO of Empower and Excel Coaching. We are very, very fortunate to have her on board with us today. And this session is very exciting, and we really look forward to having a great session. Over to you, Sobiya.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Isha. Can everybody, is the technical side okay? Can everybody hear me? So can I just be given the go-ahead for that, please? Because Isha, you've frozen on my screen.
We're good. Thank you. You can go ahead.
Super. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I hope you all are well. It's really interesting to be joining you all. So I'm really excited about this. For this session, I would really appreciate everybody to be really focused. They will require a pen and a paper, a notepad, and so you can get value from this session. When I have leaders come to me in my coaching workshops and on my one-to-ones, they come to me and I often hear the words, I can't work with that person, we clash, they bring out the worst in me. And those words are quite common for me to hear. The reason for that is because many times that is the case, but there are ways as business owners, as people who are leaders in teams, to develop strategies where you can get the best out of the people in your team. There is a particular client that springs to mind when I speak about personalities and team building. He came to me earlier on this year in January, and he was finding it really frustrating at work. He just could not understand why certain members of his team would spend hours actually enjoying the company of their teammates and actually not focusing on the task. He found that incredibly frustrating. He found the fact that people who were in his team just wouldn't get the jobs done. He himself was a very direct and driven person. And interestingly enough, through working within the coaching space and becoming aware of the different kinds of personalities, he was able to have a much stronger and better team. So much so that during the COVID crisis, right when it started here in the UK, he was able to provide support to all of his colleagues online and was checking in with them and supporting them. You may be wondering, how did that happen? And it was by becoming aware of the different needs and the different motivations the different people in his team had, and he could better cater for them. So this session today is about personalities and team building. So in terms of when we are business owners and leaders, and even if we're solopreneurs, if you are just a person who's running their own business, it's really important to know what your personality type is. What is a personality? It is a combination of all the characteristics and qualities that we have as individuals. It's what makes us unique. And this is really important, not just in terms of a working professional environment, but also in personal relationships as well. So those of you who have partners or who are married will also recognize the different personalities that we interact with. By the end of today's session, you will all be able to identify your own main personality traits. You will be able to recognize the characteristics of the 4 main personality types that there are, understand what motivates and what each of those personalities need. And also recognize ways of improving communication and working with the team members. So again, I know certain people attending today may be just at startups, so they may be individuals who are running their own business, but this will enable you to get clarity on what your strengths are and who you can work well with or employ or outsource to, because your skills don't lie in those areas. For this activity, I am going to go quite slow because everybody needs to follow. So whoever is listening, I would like you to get a fresh sheet of A4 paper and split it up into half and then half across. So going vertically and then horizontally. You'll need a whole sheet of paper for this, please, and just get these numbers all the way down. So this is the basic grid that there should be. So the top quadrant 1 to 10, the side quadrant 1 to 10 as well, all the way down and across. So number these, and I'm going to give you some time to do that. So taking this axes with these 4 quadrants, and the aim of this task is designed for you to get an idea. It's not a detailed idea because the personality traits that exist out there, there is a detailed way of getting your own unique personality type. But in this workshop, this is just an overview. And the aim of this task is for me to go through step by step for you to be able to identify your main personality type. So once you've got these 4 quadrants down, I would like you to label. Is the pace okay? Because I'm conscious that I don't want anybody to think.
We're good, I think. We're all right.
Okay, super. So in terms of the top quadrant, so the top y-axis is labeled as, right, okay. So you can label this as extrovert stroke outgoing. Looking at yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you're not that outgoing and you're not much of an extrovert, and 10 being you being really outgoing, you really enjoy having a fast-paced, on the move, energetic, doing things in a hurry, you're really optimistic. On a scale of 1 to 10, how outgoing are you? So when I say outgoing, I mean fast-paced, going on the move, being energetic, optimistic. When you're in a social environment, you're the one who's out there and you're really bubbly and quite loud, and that's the kind of person you are. So give yourself a score of 1 to 10 for that, and just mark it on the y-axis. So 1, if you're not that outgoing, give yourself a 1, 2. A lot of people who are outgoing, 9, 10, maybe even 8. So they're quite high scores. Now the y-axis at the bottom is for that's a different category. That's for introvert stroke reserved. How reserved are you? So looking at the axis that is below the horizontal line, on that scale, 1 being you are not very introverted or reserved, and 10 being you are very reserved. You are quite slow paced, you are steady, you are patient, you are cautious, you're quite reluctant in new environments. So on that axis, give yourself a score out of 10. How introverted or reserved are you? If you are quite introverted, again, the scores are 8, 9, 10. They're quite high scores. And if you feel you're not that reserved, you're not that introverted, you are not very cautious, you are not slow paced, then give yourself a lower score for that. And just cross it on the y-axis. Now moving along to now the x-axis, looking at just this quadrant on this side. How much do you enjoy the company of people? If you are somebody who's really into building relationships, sharing, having opinions, having thoughts, you really enjoy being around people, going for social events, when you're in the office or when you're in your work environment, you're busy talking to people, connecting with them, having a good laugh with your team members. So if that's the case, the scores for that are about 8, 9, 10. If you don't really like being around people, so if there's a work event, a social event, and you go and you're quite happy to just be by yourself, not be talking to anybody, then, and you're comfortable with that, that's a 1, 2, 3 maybe. But if you really like to be in the social area and be talking and connecting to people, then give yourself an 8, 9, or 10, depending on how you are. This is the final quadrant now, looking at the left side of the x-axis. Sorry, is the task. When you have a task to do, or when you have an assignment. Okay, super. So here, you should all by now, so sorry, I was going to the task. So when you have a project or an assignment or a task to do in your work life, how much time and energy do you look at focusing on that? If you're somebody who really likes to plan that in, or you're somebody who's planning and who really likes to organize and really likes to look at the details of the assignment or the project that's been set at work or that you're doing, you are somebody who really likes to focus on that, then you have a high score there. So that's about an 8, 9, 10 for you. If you're somebody who you're given a project, you just want to know what the main points are. You're not really interested in the details. You don't like to spend a long time reading information, and the task is quite boring for you. You just like to skim over the main details and take the main parts. You won't focus on the small print. Then you are a 1, 2, or 3. You're quite low in that. So think about yourself in a work environment, or just generally, how much detail do you pay to the paperwork, the task, the project, the assignment? Are you really in the detail? And if that is the case, give yourself a higher score for that. If it's a low score, give yourself a lower score. I have an example, just so that you are aware of how this works. So this is one of my clients who I did this personality exercise with, and they were, it was a lady. She was a very outgoing person, so she gave herself an 8. In terms of being introverted, in certain environments, she was reserved. So when she didn't know the people, she felt that she was slightly reserved, but not too reserved. She'll still converse with them, she'll still make contact, but she kept quite a lot of her personality to herself. So in terms of the Y scale there, she felt she was quite outgoing. So she gave herself she's a high 8 for the outgoing, and being reserved, she wasn't that reserved, depending on the environment. So gave herself a score of a 4. For being around people, really enjoyed people's company, was very sociable, really liked to connect with people, was very also sensitive, and shared her thoughts and opinions quite easily with people, had a real connection with people. So gave herself, is an 8, gave herself an 8. In terms of tasks, she was really not interested in any of the detail. When she was in any situation, whether that's at work or at home, she was not paying attention to the small print, to the small details. She would much rather hear them in a meeting or be told what the main points are, but wasn't really in the detail of the task. So she gave herself a score of a 3 for that. So if you have a look now, this is what I would like you all to do, is have a look at each of the quadrants now. This is really important, so I will slow down for this. So each of the quadrants now, you are going to identify whether you are a high on the X and high on the Y axes. The Y is the one that's going vertically, and the X is the one that's going horizontally. Are you a high? So this individual, my client, was high because she was outgoing and an extrovert and really enjoyed people's company. So she was a high 8 and a high 8, so high, high here. Going to now the second quadrant in the clockwise direction, she was low on one of them, but high on the people. So she was a high stroke low in the second quadrant. So do this for yourself as well. Whatever score you've given, are you a high, high for the first quadrant, or are you low, low? Or are you a high, low? And do the same for yourself. I've used this as an example. So I'm wanting you to do this for yourself. And I'm going to just check in. Is everybody following okay? Can you just, Isha, in terms of the pace, is it okay?
Perfect, perfect. We're all right.
Super, great. Now looking at the third quadrant going in the clockwise direction, this person, my client, was a low. She was low because it was a 4 score and a 3 score. So here was low, low. So what are you for this quadrant? Again, have a look at your scores. And if you're getting a 5 and a 5, then that's medium, right? You can do that. You can do medium, medium. But anything that's above a 5 is a high. And anything below 5 is a low. And do that for your final quadrant as well. So this client of mine was a high, low. I think that's going to come up in the screen. Sorry. So this client was a high. She was a high because there was the 8 score, but also low because she did not focus on any of the detail and was not very task focused. So it was a high stroke low. So do that for yourselves. And I want you to also bear in mind, where are your high scores? Where are your low scores? Because this is about raising awareness of yourself and your personalities. Moving on to the next step, in terms of personality profiling, these 4 quadrants are sometimes referred to by colours, sometimes letters, and sometimes animals, sometimes gems. The personality profiling that I use is called the DISC profile. So starting off with the top left-hand quadrant, that is a D. The next one is an I. Then we have an S. Sorry, my landline's ringing, so excuse that ringing in the background. And the final one is a C. So that's the label of the quadrant. And again, using my example, this client of mine was scoring high. So depending on what yours are, so I've left the labels to the disc, starting with the left top hand corner. That quadrant is the D. Moving across, it's the top right hand quadrant is the I. The bottom right hand is the S, and the bottom left hand is the C. So looking at yourselves now, I want you to just look at where you are scoring high in. Are you scoring high in the D, in the I, the S, or the C? So this client of mine was scoring high, especially high in the I, and also slightly higher in the S. Now I know I'm going to use this example because she scored a 3 and an 8 for the D, but scored a 4 and an 8 for the S. So I've gone with the S because that was slightly higher. So do that for yourself. Label the quadrants DISC, DISC, and look at where you are high in terms of your scoring. Now, the DISC profile looks at the characteristics of an individual's personality. So those people, again, before I move on to this, checking in, is the pace okay? Has everybody been able to identify their main scorings for their self?
Sobiya, we're getting a few questions. If you could open those regarding the scoring. So do you want to take them along
Yeah, of
as
course.
we go along?
I'm going to stop my sharing so I can take questions.
So the
Right.
first question is, if I had a 5 and 3 in the third quadrant, is it high or low?
It's medium low.
Gulshanara, it's medium low. Saida is asking, what about like getting 5 in 2 of them? Is middle choice is available?
So if you're getting medium, just, okay, so I was going to go through this, but I'll mention this now. If you score a 1 to 4, that's regarded as low. Again, this personality profiling goes into a lot of detail. I'm doing a very basic one because I am doing just a workshop for an hour. So for the purposes of keeping it very simple, if you've given yourself a score of 1 to 4, it's low. If you've given a score of 6 to 10, it's high. If you have a 5, just label it medium stroke medium. And
okay,
of one of the quadrants, you will score at least one quadrant will be high.
okay, if 5 is considered as high, that I think you've already answered, it's a medium, so we're good. Yes, we're good. We can continue now. We've answered all the questions.
Super. I'll go back to sharing my screen. Sorry. So in terms of looking at, identify at least one area where you are high stroke high, because you will, most of you will, well, all of you will have scored high stroke high in one of the 4 quadrants. And that shows your main personality traits. In terms of the other quadrants, the other 3, they may be medium, or high stroke low. 80% of the population have 2 traits that are higher than the other 2. Okay, one of them is the highest, then there is a second trait which is higher. But for the purposes of keeping it simple, we're going to go with your dominant characteristics. So with this person, top left, top right hand quadrant, one of my clients was very
You asked
high.
me to invite some founder from, sorry. Apologies.
Sorry, Isha, what was the question?
Just give me a second. What if you have 2 high?
That's fine.
A score from 5 to 7 will be considered as medium?
No, not 5 to 7. Just a 5 would be medium. If it's a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it's high.
Okay. Do we have to take order in consideration, like low high or high low?
No, just for the purposes of this activity, look at your highest score.
Perfect.
One quadrant which is the highest.
Okay, that's perfect. That's it for now. Is it okay if I keep asking you these questions as we go along?
Yeah.
It's an activity, so okay. I didn't
Absolutely,
want to.
Isha. I'm mindful that this is something I usually do in person. It's interactive. I give a handout, I give a printout, and I'm checking in. I can't see the attendees, and I'm looking at a screen. So please feel free to come in and check in, because I want everybody to follow this, because I know.
Sure. Okay, one last question.
Yeah.
Asadullah wants to know, I didn't score high in any quadrant. Is it okay?
Generally, it's higher in one of the areas. So if you look at your actual score, you may have given yourself a high for all of them, because it may be 6 and above. But where is it a higher score? So where is it maybe an 8, 9, 10? So looking at your numbers, where is the highest score? And that will give you an idea of what personality trait is higher for you. I hope that answers your question. Am I okay to carry on?
one last one and then we can carry on. What if all the scores are the same in all the quadrants? My scores are high in all of the quadrants.
Okay, I think in that case, looking at your scores, where, again, I'm going to go back to my previous point, where is your highest score? I've not met anybody who gets a very high score in all of the 4 quadrants. So maybe go back to the questions that I asked and really reflect. It's being realistic is really important here. This is not about sharing your scores with anybody and being amazing at everything. This is about being real and realistic, because it's about you being able to identify your strengths. So you may be higher, but where are you the highest? And if you've given yourself a low score, that's okay. Doesn't mean you're less than. It just means your strengths are slightly different. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, I think we can continue now.
Super. So looking at these 4 quadrants, the DISC, the D-I-S-C, the D is the person, if you've scored high in this, and the people who score high in the D section are people who are generally have a personality that's quite dominant. They like driving assignments and projects. They're quite demanding of their team members. They want their projects done yesterday. So they are very demanding. They're very determined and purposeful. They're decisive. They're very good at making decisions. And they have a very they're doers. They drive assignments. They drive projects. They are the people who drive the team. They have an attitude of make it happen and make it happen now. So that is the personality traits of the people who have scored a high D. The people who've scored a high I, or people who score high I's, are the people who are influential. They're inspirational. They like to impress people. They like to have things and projects that are interesting, and they are genuinely interested in other people as well. These people who score high I, so my client was an example, has a very let's make it fun. Whatever project we're doing, let's make it fun. And that is the personality, overall personality trait of the people who are high I. Moving on to the S type personalities, they're people who are supportive, they're submissive, they're stable, they like things to be steady, they don't like too much excitement, they want things that are easygoing, steady, they're generally quite shy, and they're sentimental. They care about the emotions of other people and they value them. They're quite sentimental. And when it talks about them being submissive, they overall have an attitude of, okay, I'll go along with you, I'll do what you want to do, because they're generally quite sentimental. People who have a high C score are the people who are generally have a personality where they're cautious, they're very competent. So that means they will know the information inside out. They will know all the small print, the details. They will calculate and they'll recalculate to make sure things are okay. The concern. They're the people in your team or people you may know of who are careful, and they like to contemplate. They really like to think about things, and they have an attitude of, does this make sense? So these are the main personality types, and by doing your score, you should be able to identify one area where you are the highest, and that shows what your main personality type is. You may have higher or maybe medium scores in the other 3 areas, but there is one area, one personality which is higher for you than the others. So in relation to that, I have 2 questions for you, and this is where I'd like to share and get some interaction. What 2 personality types dominate you? If you can't identify 2, give me just 1. What's your main personality type? And I'll just take questions from 5 people. What have you learned about yourself so far by doing this? What have you learned or realized or become aware of about yourself so far? So in terms of personality types, what's the main personality type that we have? People, anybody who would like to share?
We have a few more questions.
Okay.
Amber Farooq wants to know, can you repeat how to read this figure? I joined late and missed that part. What figure would that be, Amber? You'd have to maybe tell us a bit more. SN Iqbal is saying this is a glorious activity. That's fine. Okay, so people are now saying that they are, what type they are. Should I tell you what type they are?
I can see, yeah. So I'm looking at the questions. So Nimra is saying I'm a D and an I. Wajiha saying mine is coming extrovert. Okay, but what is it? A D-I-S-C? Have you been able to identify what your dominant characteristic is, Wajiha? So I've got Sobiya saying hers. Well, his is. I'm not sure if it's a he or a she. Sorry, is a C. I and D are high. Okay, interesting for Dawood. Okay, so Gulshan has said mine is make it fun. Right, that's great. So it's an I. This is really interesting. It's great that people are able to get an overview. Super. So that's brilliant. In terms of this next section, so just bear with me, I'm going to share my screen. Sorry. So in terms of the Ds now, what we're going to look at in this section is the people who have got a high D, a high I, a high S, and a high C. What motivates them? It's great being able to identify what personality trait you are. Once you've identified your own personality trait, I'm just going to so you can see me. Can you all see me?
Yes, yes,
yeah,
we can.
super. So what is the point of this in terms of being able to identify what personality trait you are? It puts you in a strong position in the sense of you know what works for you and what personality trait you have, but it also allows you to recognize what you are maybe not good at. So those people who are good at connecting with people, who are the high I's, they won't have a problem networking, building relationships, building a team environment. But what they may not be good at is all the detail, the calculations, the information, the cautiousness. People who are high I's generally have a let's get on with it attitude. Whereas people who are cautious are more calculating, they're more aware of what's going on. So when you are, let's say, high in one of the personality traits, recognizing where you are not high in enables you to draw upon other people in your team. If you're a solopreneur or you're a startup and you're just a one person, you're just running your business by yourself, you can use or outsource those areas of your business or draw upon the skills of other people. You can manage it yourself, yes. However, it enables you to look at the skills of other people, and where you are low, you can draw that. You can either outsource it or you can bring somebody in. So this next section, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you what motivates these kinds of people. What their needs are. When they have a leader, how do they respond well? What enables them to respond well to the leaders that they have? And what do they need to learn? Because we may have a high personality trait, but we also need to learn other characteristics to make ourselves better. So high Ds are motivated by challenge, choices, and control. Their motivation, they are motivated by things that are challenging, when they have lots of choices, and when they have control. It really motivates them. They need to have freedom. They need authority. They need a variation of tasks. They want their tasks and their assignments and their projects to be challenging and difficult. And they are really incentivized by growth and development. When they know they are growing and when they are developing, that really enables them. When you are a high D, you respond really well to people who give you direct answers, who stick to business. They don't talk about everything and anything. They're sticking to the project and sticking to business. They're emphasizing their goals. They're providing pressure. They're saying this needs to be done by this time, and that's the deadline. They allow freedom for their personal accomplishments. So although they like their leaders to stick to business, they also want them to give them freedom for their personal accomplishments, extracurricular things, interests that they have outside of work. High Ds need to learn that people are important. People who are high Ds are generally very dominant people, and they can sometimes sideline people's opinions, their feelings and emotions. So people who are high D personality profiles need to recognize people's emotions and views are important. They need to recognize and learn that when people relax or when they relax, it's not wrong. It's not a crime. It's okay. And that some controls are important, but controlling everything is not. And that everyone has a boss. They also need to learn that when they have a conclusion, by just assuming that, it's not good. They need to verbalize it. They need to say it so people around them understand it. So this is the overview of people who are a high D, what motivates them, what they need, who they respond to, and what they need to learn. And this is important for even if you don't score high in this, it's good to be aware of what these people have so you can recognize it. People who are a high I are motivated by recognition. So this client of mine thrives off recognition. When she's praised, absolutely loves it. And when she's doing a project, for people to say, yeah, that's really good, I really like that. Popularity, people's opinions, approval matter to these people who have a high I. They're motivated by that, but they have a need for prestige. They want to be really good. They want to be quite high up there. Friendships and relationships are really important to them. They have this need that they need to inspire and influence people. And they need to be able to say, verbalize their ideas. This is what high Is are like. They respond to leaders or people who are managing them or leading them. They respond well when it's a democratic leader. They give the options and the choices, and then they can make a decision. They like to have social dues, social involvement outside of work. So a colleague get together, a team meetup, a coffee outside of work. When they have leaders who provide this, they really respond well. They like to be recognized by their leaders and have incentives as well when they risk take and have an atmosphere of excitement. So if you have somebody in your team who's in high I and you're leading them, and you need to be able to provide them with this atmosphere of excitement, challenge, risk-taking, and also recognize what they're doing. High eyes also need to learn that time needs to be managed. They can't spend forever just talking. They need to be realistic. Too much optimism can be harmful. So when they think they can achieve so much, they need to be a bit realistic about that. High eyes tend to talk a lot. They like to socialize, they like to influence, and they like to inspire. So listening for them, they need to learn to listen. And that when they have a deadline and an assignment or a task to do, it needs to be completed. And that accountability is really important for them. They need to learn that, because they're generally people who will not really stick to deadlines. They're people who are talking all the time, so they're not listening very well. High S's are motivated by security, appreciation, and assurance. And what they need is they need an area of specialism. So in a team, the people who are high eyes, they need to have this security. So this area of specialization is really important for them. They need to be able to identify with the group. So in a larger team, the high S's will have a team that they are associated with. That's where they are the specialists. So people, for example, the engineering team in a large company, the engineering team is the team that knows what they're doing. It's an area of their specialism. The engineers know where they need to go. They identify with this group. They have for example, an established work pattern. They know what they're doing. It's stable. So high S's need this. They need consistent, familiar environments. If there's change, they get unsettled. And they need leaders who are relaxed, amiable. They need leaders who will allow them time to adjust, just in case plans are changed. They serve really well as friends, and they respond really well to leaders who give them time and space to do their own work. But they also respond really well when their goals and their tasks are clearly defined. So if you are a leader or a team manager who has people who are high S's, you need to be really clear about what you want from them and when you need it done by, but then also give them enough time. So here, a high D person, the people who are dominant and decisive, they want things done. They have this get it done now attitude. So they may not recognize that high S's need time to do their task, to do their project. This is why it's really important to know how to respond to people in your team as well, and what their needs are. What high S's need to learn is that change can be a good thing, actually. It gives them opportunity to develop and grow. Friendships are not everything. Discipline is good. And it's okay to say no. When you say no to somebody, it's okay, because it's okay. They have this feeling of guilt when they say no. And they tend to serve. When I say serve, they like to help people. They like to be there for people. And that doesn't mean that they are less. It doesn't mean that they are compromised. They still have a lot of value. Finally, the high C's are motivated by quality answers, excellence, and value. They need clearly defined tasks and explanations. They need to know all the detail. They need to know the protocols, and they need enough time to complete tasks and assignments. They need participation from their team. They do not like risks. They feel uncomfortable with risks. So when you are working with somebody with a high C, you need to limit the risk. They need some stability. They need safety as well. Assignments, they need to make sure their assignments have enough time so they can be clearly planned and precise. And when you, as a leader or a business owner, are giving them something, you need to make sure it's got all the detail. So an example is with lockdown. People who are going back to work, who are high Cs, especially in the UK because lockdown is easing this week, when they're going back to work, they want to know all the health and safety details. They need to know what's going to be happening where, how it's going to be happening. Everything needs to be precise. This is what a high C will need. Their leaders need to provide assurance, give them support, have an open door policy. So they need to be available for their team members. And they define, the leaders who are managing high Cs define concise operating standards, and whatever they're giving to their colleagues is of detail. High Cs need to learn that total support isn't necessary. It's not everything. They can manage themselves as well. And they can't have a detailed, specific, thorough explanation every time. It's just not possible. And that deadlines need to be met. Overthinking and over-analyzing isn't going to work for them all the time. They need to still meet the deadlines. And that risks can be profitable for them. It can be good. And that excellence isn't only the way they see it. There are different forms of excellence and achievements. So this is an overview of what those main personality types are. So in terms of this next task, what I would like you to do is I'd like you to think about one person, whether you work with them or whether it's your partner or your the person that you're married to or a friend, just one person that you know of that you can now identify what personality they are. Are they a high D? Are they a high I? Are they a high S or a high C? What is their predominant personality trait? So can you think of one person that you know of who you can identify as one of those 4 personalities? And it can be, if it's work related, that's even better because it's about building teams. But I recognize there's some of you out there who are solopreneurs, so you might not be working with anybody. But if you're working in a team, that's even better. Can you identify one person who has one of these personality types? And write down 2 ways that you are going to deal with them now that will help you in your communication, in your dealing, in your interaction with them. 2 ways that you will deal with them or interact with them or behave with them or communicate with them differently, having done this personality profiling and being aware of what the motivators, the needs are of these people. 2 things. And would people like to share something that they've learned and they're going to now improve on? Okay, so Gulshan, if you've identified your best friend in category of C, how are you going to improve your communication with your best friend? Okay, so this is great because this is why it's so powerful to use. So Saida's saying, wow, I realize this is actually why me and my boss don't agree most of the time. It seems I need to learn the things you've mentioned with the C and S. Okay. So that's great. Okay. So can you see personality traits of a personality C? The C person is the person who's cautious, they're calculating. These are just they're the general personality types of these people who are high Cs. Right. Let me tell you a story about one of my colleagues, well, clients who I worked with in relation to this. I went into their business and I ran this workshop, and they were able to form a better and cohesive team. They ran through my coaching program. So the director, I was doing one-to-one coaching with him, and then I was doing group coaching with the clients, the rest of the team. And through that, they gained an awareness of their personality traits. Not just that, but even as within their teams, they had goals and they had action plans that they needed to identify and clarify. But being aware of their personalities and their dominant characteristics meant that in a team, they were able to allocate the jobs of marketing and networking to the high eyes. When there was a project and it needed to be planned and prepared and all the detail needed to be done and analysed, they gave it to those people who scored a high C. The people who were great leaders and who were decisive and they really got projects done, they were given the Ds. So when you have a team and you're aware of their personalities, working within coaching enables you to clarify where you are and where you want to be. And this personality profiling is a powerful tool because it enables you to recognize where the strengths and the weaknesses of a team exist. And so now with that project, with those clients who I have had time to work with on a one-to-one with the director and as a group coaching program with the colleagues and the teams, their team is so much more cohesive and so much more effective as well, which means their goals and their tasks are far more efficient to reach, and there's a higher success rate in terms of their overturns and in terms of their running of their business. In terms of this as well, it's also really important to recognize in these personality types, there are people that clash. And there are people that are going to be attracted to each other and complement each other. So in this personality profile, opposites attract. So here, sorry, I'll show you a visualization. The Ds attract really well with the S's. The I's attract really well with the C's. Now, the Ds, the people who are direct, decisive, and doers, they go well with the S, the high S's. Reason being is because the people who are direct and decisive and they're doers, what they don't do is they don't slow down. They're not supportive and they're not stable. They want things done and they want them done now. So the S people complement them really well because they can slow them down, they can stabilize them, and they also make them aware of the sensitivities. See, in a team, the Ds don't really think about people's emotions and their thoughts. They don't slow down. So working well with somebody with a high S enables them to slow down. And the people who are high S's are complemented by the Ds because the high S's are generally introverted and the Ds are extroverted. So again, they're complementing. Looking at the I's and the C's, the high I's are influential, interesting, they're impulsive. What they don't do is concentrate on the detail. They don't look at the calculations. They're not careful. They're not cautious. I's are generally extroverted. They like to be around people. The C's are generally introverted. So again, they are complementing each other. And so in terms of this personality profiling, it's important to recognize who you attract to. So again, I'm going to ask you to think about your work environment and think about somebody who is opposite to you or somebody you work well with, maybe opposite to you or work well with. And what is it about that person that enables you to work well with them? So is it the way they are in terms of their mannerism? Is it because they really get you? Is it because you're opposite and you tend to attract? So what personality types do you work with better? And why do you think you work with these people better? So these two questions, what personality types do you work with better? And why do you work with these people better? Right, this is a really interesting question. Saida said, sometimes I step back that my personality won't allow me to be a leader, which prevented me from previous opportunities. Is perfectionist person able to handle this position? Okay, so you're asking a coach who doesn't believe in perfection. Perfection isn't something that exists. And so when we say we are perfectionists, we're actually holding ourselves back. We're trying to achieve this level that doesn't exist. And in a coaching environment, I would be able to coach, and I would be able to challenge, and I would be able to see why you feel perfection exists. But in the case of this situation, if you are not a leader and you're not extroverted, or you're not a people's person, it doesn't mean that just because you are an extrovert you've got to be just because you're an introvert you can't be a leader. There are other skills that you can have, and you can learn skills of being able to become a leader. So just because you're not an extrovert, it doesn't mean you can't be a leader. Skills can be developed. So if you're wanting to go into a leadership position, don't discount it. You can still do that. Okay, so Rimsha's asking, is it okay to be introvert, or we need to move forward extrovert for our better communication? If yes, how can we change? It's okay to be any one of those personality traits. There is no right or wrong. This is why those people who scored high on all of them, I was asking them to be realistic, because we're not perfect individuals. We can't be amazing at everything. We're all going to have strengths, and we're all going to have areas which we can improve on or strengthen. So if you are an introvert, completely fine. It's okay, completely fine. And in terms of moving towards being extroverted, you can develop skills where you can communicate better and say what's important to you, and that is something which can improve your communication style. But by personality, you may still be an introvert. You may still be an S or a C, but you may learn certain skills of how to connect with people and communicate. So there are skills you can implement to become better at certain positions. Okay, so Marim is saying, I sometimes struggle with meeting deadlines, and at the beginning of the task, I'm optimistic, but at the end, I get bored. You sound like a high I. Can you share why does this happen, and how can I improve? So it's important for you to recognize when the deadline is. And if you are a high I, people who are high I's need to recognize deadlines are important. What can help them get to those deadlines? Planning your time, being aware of the time scale, and also being aware of what needs to be done. You can't do everything at the last minute. So maybe pacing yourself, being better planned. And if you get bored, then maybe you can, one of the strategies some people use is they do it little and more often. So they do little so they don't get too much time to get bored, and then they have a break, or they go away or do something different, or they do the task or the assignment in a way that is interesting to them and they're more creative with it. So there's different strategies you can implement. I hope that answers your question. So this is Fatima. So my best friend and I don't just get along well, but also have a great working relationship. I'm more ID type, while she is more SC, okay, opposite. Okay, Nudrat has said, is it important to interact and socialize with people to be successful, or being reserved is okay? As I've said, if you're reserved, that's part of your personality, but you can learn skills of being able to have communication with people. It doesn't mean you've got to be like the high I's where you're out there influencing and inspiring people, but you can move your numbers up slightly by learning skills, by having conversations, but you can still be reserved. It's just you're learning to have conversations in certain environments. Okay, so Dawood has said, I get bored with every task that I excitedly start. What should I do? I'm a high I. Plan and pace. So plan what the task is and pace it out. Don't try and do everything at the first instance and then get bored. Pace it out and be aware of your deadline, and maybe set small deadlines for yourself so you're pacing it.
Yeah, we'll just take maybe 2 more questions because we've
Yes,
gone over time, and I know
I'm mindful
we
of the
just asked
time
you
as
for
well.
an hour. Yes, so maybe 2 more questions, any 2 that you want, and then we can wrap it up. Please.
Okay, so in that case, I would like people to just finish on this point. From today's session, there's a lot that I have shared. But from today's session, what has been your main learning point that you are going to be taking away? So it's not a question, but it's an answer I would like everybody to take away. What has been your main or your key learning point from today's webinar that you're going to be taking away? And I'll just read maybe the first few comments on that. So what's your key learning point or key takeaway from today's session? Okay, so Isha, there's people who've answered that. I'm not conscious of the time as well. In terms of, just before I go out, I have, right at the beginning of the Q&A, in the chat, I have sent my links for my Instagram and my Facebook and LinkedIn. So if any of you are interested in reaching out to me, please feel free to do that.
You sent it to all the panelists and attendees, just confirming?
I've just put
it's just to all the panelists, right? That's your LinkedIn, Instagram. I will post it here so all the attendees can have access to it. Because that was just sent to us, the team.
Right. Okay.
So just give me a second. Okay, no, so we will have to do that because it doesn't allow me to copy paste.
So should I say?
So what you need to do is in the 2, you have to select all panelists and attendees instead of all panelists in the chat box.
So that's done.
Yes, perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Would that be all? Thank you so much, Sobiya. Thank you for joining us. It was a very insightful, very interesting session. And the engagement today was phenomenal. We've never had this level of engagement from our participants. So I'm sure they had a great time too. Thank you once again for doing this. I'm pretty sure a lot of people will be getting back to you with lots of questions now. But very grateful that you took out time for us. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to all the participants and for the opportunity.
Thank you, thank you. Sobiya, the recordings and the pictures will be shared with you shortly. As soon as we have them ourselves, we'll share them with you. Thank you to the attendees also for taking out time and attending this session. It was lovely having you all as part of our session. So thank you very much. We'll be signing off now. Bye-bye. Thank you, Sobiya. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.